I really like to get the most out of my moulds. When I mix up too much UV resin or epoxy resin, I will put it into pendant moulds. And as I say, I'd like to try and get the best out of them. So I don't always know what to do with this shape once I've poured it. So quite often I have a lot of extra bits, and I found a fun way to use it. I actually was looking at one of these pieces, and instead of having it this way round, which you would normally do because this is where the post would be for you to hang it, I had it this way up. And I don't know, my brain's a little bit weird because I suddenly thought, wow, that looks a little bit like a bird. Stick a beak on this end, think I could turn it into a bird. So I'm going to use some UV resin by Let's Resin just to show you what I want to make with this. I'm going to go ahead and mix up some of the resin with some pearl white mica from Arteza, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with this. Okay, so I've put a little bit of the resin, the UV resin in there, and I'm going to drop some of this. I don't want too much because it is UV resin. You've got to remember that you can't make it too opaque. You want the light to go through it. So let me start off with, oh, come on, I'm not even picking it up now. I either pick up too much or too little. Let me start with that, and I will mix this around in here, get the lumps out and get it all incorporated. Okay, I am going to add a little bit more UV resin in there. And this mould will make quite a chunky pendant. I don't really want it to be that chunky, so I'm not going to fill up my mould. I will put down a layer and then I'm going to remove it from the mould, and I can top coat it afterwards. There we go, I've got a few bubbles in there. So you can heat that up with a heat gun to help get rid of those bubbles, or you can just let it sit for a few minutes. As long as it's shaded from any UV light, it'll be perfectly fine, and that'll give it a chance for the bubbles to rise up out of here. All right, that looks nice and debubbled, so I'm going to pour this layer in now. I did heat this up a little bit, and if you do decide to heat it up, then make sure that you let it cool down before you start to use it. So I put a layer in there and make sure that I get that all across the bottom and all behind that post. All right, and now I'm going to cure that. Okay, I've got a thin layer in there and I've cured it from the back and the front. So I'm going to pop this out. All right, so I've taken that out and you can see that it's very ragged. You've got sort of bits jutting up, and that was from when it was against the side of the mould. I'm just going to use a craft knife just to trim that down because I don't have a deburring tool. Just be really careful if you're going to do this. Okay, that'll do. Let me move that out the way for a minute, and I can put that on the back of an old mould that I've got. So I'm going to put some more of the white resin on top just to bring this a little bit more level. Let me stir that around. If I push that down on there, that'll grip a little bit. And then just even this out. I do want to keep that hole. You'll see why in a little bit. So, okay, now I've got some nice swirly patterns in there, so I'm gonna see if I can just encourage some more swirls. That will do. And now I'm going to put this under my lamp and cure this. Okay, so now he's nice and level, and I've mixed up some red mica. Actually, it's a nail powder. I mixed up this kind of nail powder in red. So it's an acrylic powder. And I've got a particularly runny at the moment because I've just heated that up. So I need to make sure that this cools down. So this is why you need to let it cool down. You can see just how runny that is. And if I was to use this right now, I would not be able to get the effect that I want. So I'm going to leave this just to stiffen up again when it cools down. Okay, so that's cooled down now, and you can see it's much thicker. It's not running around quite so much. So I should be able to get the shapes that I want. So the first thing I want to do is kind of draw a tear shape onto the side here. That'll do. And now I'm just going to use my UV torch and set that. Okay, that should be enough to keep that where I want it to be. And now I can fill that in. So that's the easiest way. If I'd have just put a blob on here, then it would have drawn it in and I wouldn't have been able to get the shape that I want. It would have kept sort of trying to draw into the smallest amount as possible, a droplet. So this way I can actually get the teardrop shape that I want. And now I can cure that underneath my lamp. Okay, so now that I've done that, I want to just add a little bit of the white. That's blended in more than I wanted it to, so don't worry about it, just wipe it off and start again. So let's try again. There you go. I'm kind of going for a sort of zigzaggy effect. So again, I'm going to try and cure that a little bit with my torch. I'll do that one. Let's try and put a few more bits down here. Okay, and just the last little bit down here. And now I'm going to put this underneath my lamp. Kind of looks like a strawberry, not what I was going for, but okay. Okay, going back to the red. And this time I want to put a blob here. And I'm going to go ahead and cure that with my torch. Just a little bit, just enough to stop it from flowing around, and then I can build this up because I want to try and make this almost level with the top of the head. Let's try and cure that. I'm just flash curing it. I'll put it under the lamp again in a minute. All right, that's one. Now I need to put another one here. And I want to cure that too. All right, and now I need to just turn this slightly. And I want to put another one there. Let me see if I like the look of that. Okay, and right, so that's going to go back underneath my lamp, and I'll put that on for 90 seconds. Okay, now I've mixed up some yellow mica, and I'm turning this all the way around now. I need to get my torch again. Grab that handy. So now I need to put a tiny bit of the yellow just along that edge and cure that. Okay, and now I've got a little beak, so I'm just going to see if I can add a tiny bit more, but I do want to try and keep it quite sharp. So again, a little bit of curing. I think you can tell we've got a chicken. That should do. Now, I could mix up some black resin and make a dot for an eye, but why bother? I'm going to use a black Sharpie, and I'm just going to put a dot for the eye. It's a chicken. Okay, under the lamp again. Okay, now I want to get some of this. I think it's like a linen thread or a waxed cotton thread. I don't know exactly. I don't think it's waxed cotton, but I've got this sort of thick yarn. So I'm going to cut off a chunk, roughly, I don't know, 3 inches long. Doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. And I'm going to thread that through the bottom and pull it roughly evenly. My gloves. So I'm going to pull this tight down the bottom, and I'm holding it up in the air. So now I want to take some of the white and fill in this hole. So I don't want too much. I don't want it flowing out the back. So I'm going to have to build this up a little bit at a time. Again, where's my little lamp? So I'm going to fill the hole in with the white, and then I will cure that again.
Where the cornfields grow tall, lives a wiry chicken who's the talk of them all. With legs like toothpicks and feathers so bright, he's scratching up trouble from morning till night.
Okay, so that's all filled in now, and I've got a pair of dangly legs. But to help them dangle a little bit better, I'm just going to trim the bottom off. So they're a little bit longer than I want. So I think maybe about there. I do want quite long comical legs. And I'm going to put a little bead on the bottom to stop them from fraying. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm literally going to mix a little bit of the red, because I don't need this yellow any longer. I've done the beak. So I'm going to mix a little bit of red in there. Turn that into an orange. Use the other end of my stick. There we go. Got a nice orange. Move that back out of the way. And I'm going to hold one of the pieces of string out of the way. I've got my UV torch here, and I'm dipping the end of the string into the resin, and I'm picking up a blob, and then I'm going to cure that. So I'm just trying to keep it angled away from the pot and still be able to show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to twist that around a little bit. And try and get the light to shine everywhere. And then I can dip it back in again and have another go. And you don't want to make these too big, but you do want them a decent size, because you want them to be slightly heavy. That way they will allow the legs to sort of move around and dangle. So I find about 3 or 4 dips is fine. It looks like maybe 3 on this attempt. Just want to try and stop it flowing, and then I'm going to pop this under the lamp, and then I will go ahead and do the other leg. Now my chicken's got crazy legs, and I'm going to put a brooch back or pin back on there so that I can turn it into a wearable piece of funky jewellery. So I think I want him like that. I'm going to use the Let's Resin UV resin. It's the bonding resin. And again, I'm going to put a tiny bit onto my mat here, or my mould, and then I can pick that up. And I'm going to drop it into the holes. And then I get my torch. Just make sure that that is bonded on there. That should be enough. Now I'm going to take some UV resin, and I'm going to have to make sure that this is propped up a little bit, because I have got the wing on the back there, so it's not a flat mould. So I'm just going to move that out the way and make sure that I can get it as flat as possible by putting it back into the mould. And now I can put some UV resin on here and just cover that base up a little bit, and that will give it added strength. It means that it shouldn't fall off. Just be very careful that you don't get anything over the hinge or the clasp at the front. So let me spread that out.
Skinny legs a pecking and a scratching away, kicking up dust in the barnyard ballet. He's a feathered whirlwind causing a scene.
And here it's finished. I've done another one, and depending on which way you place the head, it can change the look of them. I put the head on this longest side. I think it makes it look a little bit more like a chick. It means that the hole where you put the legs is much further down, and it just completely changes the look. This one I think looks very much like a folk art chicken. I placed the brooch pin in the middle of this one, and it means that the top is sticking away from the jumper or whatever you pin it on. So that is something to be mindful of. It means that the legs are pressed against my fabric. This one, I put the pin on the top and it's sitting much flatter, and the legs are able to dangle better. I think they're stinking cute, and you could also put a little eye hook or something in the top to turn them into hanging ornaments for a tree. You can put them on a card, put a magnet on the back. Lots of different colour variations and different ways to make them. I really love them. They are quirky and funny, and I'm going to be making more of them for sure. If you've liked this, please like and share and leave me a comment. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It's free, and you can come back and see what I'm going to be making next time. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and take care. Bye.